Listen, I don't think it's nobody who hates snakes more than me. More than me, bro. I hate them. And that's what this video was about. How Japan brought snake killers to the island 25 years later.
For a long time, bites from the venomous Habu snake were a major issue in a few regions of Japan. The snake had a big impact on people's lives. For example, statistics show that in 1980, around 400 people were bitten, and some of them didn't survive. There are other venomous snakes in Japan as well. In fact, there are quite a lot, but the most harm comes from the biggest ones, the Habu and their kin, the eastern pit vipers. They're all related to rattlesnakes and puff adders, and you could call coral snakes and cobras their cousins, just so you understand who the Japanese had to deal with. And quite often, all the bitten people were in serious danger because there were no antidotes for a long time. And when they did appear, you still had to get to the medicine. The antidote was made in liquid form, so it couldn't be stored in rural areas where there was no electricity or proper storage conditions, but it's those rural areas where the bites usually happen. Set up power lines there? Takes forever and costs a fortune. Come up with a new antidote? Same problem. And who knows if it's even possible. In the end, Japan came up with a solution that seemed like pure genius. Bring in an animal that eats snakes and is immune to their venom. And then, as usual, things didn't go according to plan, but we've got it all under control. So a cup of coffee, an unobtrusive reminder not to forget to hit that like button, and let's dive right into the story. You've probably already guessed what animal we're going to talk about. I even suspect it's on the thumbnail. So in 1979, about 30 small ruddy mongooses were brought into Amami Oshima Island to deal with local threats. There were several threats. Besides the Habu snakes, the mongooses were also supposed to take care of the rats as a bonus. The natural habitat of these mongooses is Asian countries like India.
Am I the last to know about the mongoose? Am I the last person on earth to know that they have no fear and just run up on a snake and just take him out? Take him out. That's crazy.
Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan. And the wildlife of Japan wasn't prepared for such guests. The impact of the mongoose population became really obvious by 1993, and the Ministry of the Environment raised the alarm. You can get why the officials were concerned, as the mongoose population on the island was skyrocketing, hitting a peak of 10,000 by 2000. Did the snake population drop? Technically, yes, but mongooses weren't responsible for that at all. It turned out that the Habu hunters had no interest in their venomous prey. Although at first glance, mongooses seemed like the perfect solution, the best option out of all of them. First, these animals are known for their agility and speed, which makes them formidable opponents for cobras. And cobras are cousins to the Habu, so it should have worked. Second, mongooses have special acetylcholine receptors that make them less sensitive to cobra venom. This way, mongooses survive even bites that would be deadly for other animals. Third, evolution literally made sure that mongooses could kill snakes. It even showed them how. The critters use their quick reflexes and sharp teeth to deliver fatal bites. Overall, you couldn't find a better killer. But there's one but. Mongooses are active during the day. As for the Habu, it's nocturnal, meaning the animals rarely cross paths. However, there's a second reason why mongooses were ineffective. Even if their timings lined up, it wouldn't have made any difference. The thing is, snakes are relatively tricky prey, and catching them takes some effort. And why bother trying when there's plenty of easier prey around, like mice and rabbits? It's like choosing between gourmet dining and...
So you brought the mongoose to the island and it chose to go after the mice and the rabbits and sleep during the day while the snake roams at night, or however it goes. But that's gotta suck, bro. Come on, what are the odds?
Fast food, but gourmet dining also tries to sink its teeth into you? In the end, the mongooses turned out to be completely useless for the job they were brought for, but they were very successful at breeding. And in 2000, the Japanese government started an active program to reduce their population. Since then, about 32,000 individuals have been captured. The last recorded mongoose capture happened in April 2018, and in the 6 years since, no new cases have been reported. Seems there's no one left to catch. And this led experts to decide that there are no more mongooses left on the island. Japan's Ministry of the Environment reported the successful eradication of the non-native mongoose population on Amami Oshima Island.
本当にありがとうございます。おめでとうございます。
Everyone was thrilled.
You know it's a problem when you hold a press conference for it, bro. Golly. You had to hold a press conference like, listen, this problem here, well, the other problem might not be over, but this one is over with.
Well, except for the mongooses, probably. But how did the Japanese manage to deal with the invasive species? It was actually a rather bumpy road to success. At first, people just set up traps along the roads. But this measure didn't really bring much result. The traps barely attracted the animals, and it became clear that only a more thorough approach would help deal with the mongooses. Eventually, they started using traps, toxic baits, and attractants, substances that lure animals to the smell. They also used different monitoring techniques, even brought in search dogs. All of this paid off. On this graph, the line represents the mongoose population, and the bars show the number of traps set. But these are not the old ones anymore. The traps were specifically designed for mongooses. Due to their specific shape and size, other animals can't get trapped in these. Oh, and of course, civilians were involved as well. Since 2005, squads of mongoose hunters, consisting of locals and others, have been roaming through the forests and mountains to trap mongooses. Lots of money, effort, and man-hours were spent, all in an attempt to eradicate the population completely. Some viewers might be wondering, why bother with all this? Couldn't they have just left the mongooses alone? Sure, they weren't originally living on the island, but was it really necessary to spend so much effort getting rid of them? Well, yeah. The thing is, instead of controlling the snake population as expected, the mongooses started hunting endemic species on the island, including Amami rabbits and other local animals. It's worth mentioning that Amami Oshima is a subtropical island and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's home to many rare and vulnerable species. The main target of the mongooses has become none other than the Amami rabbit, which is now endangered. These rabbits are often referred to as living fossils because they are the last surviving remnants of an ancient species of Asian rabbits. Once upon a time, these rabbits inhabited the mainland, but now they can only be found on 2 tiny islands. However, because of the mongooses, the likelihood of encountering them has dropped sharply. Mongooses have also had a big impact on the populations of Ryukyu rats, which are now also at risk of extinction. In the end, about 15 endemic species were harmed because of the mongoose, which was actually introduced with good intentions. The farming sector was hit too. Mongooses, without bothering too much, preyed on farm birds and consumed fruits from the fields, and in their free time spread diseases to those they didn't eat. In just 20 years, the habitat of some small animals has shrunk by 40%. It became clear that the decision to bring mongooses to tiny Japanese islands was actually very destructive, because islands are always unique ecosystems with local species that aren't used to living with predators and simply don't know how to protect themselves from them. Actually, the arrival of a new predator would cause damage anywhere on the planet, but it hits islands and everyone living on them especially hard, especially if the predator is a mongoose, because mongooses like to eat and will eat just about anything they can easily catch. It took almost 25 years to rid the island of the invasive species and nearly half a century to wrap up the whole project. And although the extermination of a huge number of mongooses sounds kind of incredibly cruel from the perspective of preserving local species, Japan did everything very right. If you've been watching our videos for a while, you know how invasive species work. For those who've just joined us, let me explain. When invasive species appear in a new area, you can't let them spread and reproduce too much. If you miss the moment at the very beginning, it'll be much harder to get rid of them later. And in some cases, it might even be impossible. Since the Japanese can no longer find mongooses on the island, it means they managed to get rid of all of them in that tiny window called before it was too late. To put it in perspective, there are only 9 cases in the world where mongooses have been eradicated after being introduced. But our case is the only one in the world where a mongoose was successfully eradicated on such a large island as Amami Oshima. The reason's simple. The larger the area that needs to be cleared of an invasive species, the harder it is to do. By the way, snake bites have gradually stopped being a problem. By 2020, the number of bites had dropped to around 60 a year. But as I mentioned before, it's not thanks to the mongooses. People started taking various measures on their own, and the antidote became much more accessible, which prevented fatal cases. The black bars represent cases of bites where an antidote was administered. As you can see, the situation has drastically changed. Since 1992, there hasn't been a single recorded death from a Habu bite. It's true that mongooses remain on other islands, so the fight against them isn't over yet. The experience gained on Amami Oshima is planned to be applied to other parts of Japan. For example, a team of specialists will soon be sent to the northern part of Okinawa. Invasive predators have also been spotted there, because there's a serious risk of the mongoose from Okinawa invading Amami Oshima again, and then they'll have to start all over again. Mongooses were brought to Okinawa during the Meiji era, so about 70 years earlier than on Amami Oshima. They released 17 animals at that time, but the conditions for the mongooses there are a lot more favorable. Okinawa has a higher temperature and is closer to the natural habitat of mongooses, so the birth rate and survival rate of invasive animals are higher here. For now, their population is controlled in the north. In the central and southern regions, mongooses will live as before. However, on Okinawa, there are fences, and thanks to them, the mongoose population decreases year by year.
See, now I get why these animals be so upset and mad and snapping at us, me wanting to attack, bro. We remove them out of their habitat. They get to a new habitat, get comfortable, start learning the area, then we snatch them right back out of that habitat and put them somewhere else. They sick of us. They hate humans. This is why they be coming at us the way they do, man. We be thinking of something wrong. No, we did this.
Fences, by the way, are not very tall, but they're made in an L shape at the bottom to stop mongooses from digging. And it seems to be quite effective, since mongooses don't usually climb over them. But there are also similarities with Amami Oshima. The survival of 3 endemic bird species on Okinawa depends on mongooses. If the story about bringing mongooses to a place to get rid of something sounds familiar, you're right. Japan isn't the first country to turn biological control. Yes, there's a term for when people use one species of animal to eradicate another. And there's even a whole field of science dedicated to it. Usually when people want to pull off something like this, they do research to identify the pest and its predator. Then they follow up with even more extensive research to understand if the predator or pest will impact everyone else in the region. And only then do they usually release the predator to work. And people have been doing this for a long time, in fact, quite successfully. The most famous example is farmers using predatory insects to protect fruit trees and gardens. But what about the mongooses? Small Asian mongoose was introduced to Cuba, Croatia, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, Belize, Honduras, Panama, and a bunch of other countries, and usually everything went well. But then Hawaii decided to give mongooses a try. In the 1800s and up until the mid-1900s, the most valuable commodity in Hawaii was sugarcane. They actively grew it here, and one of the main problems the Hawaiian sugar plantations dealt with back then was rats. The rats chewed on the sugarcane stalks because of their sweet taste. Well, I guess you can understand them. The rat invasion destroyed a significant amount of the sugarcane, but they couldn't manage to fight them off. So in 1872, the planters came across an article about successes in battling rats achieved by sugar producers in the Caribbean. The scheme was pretty simple by today's standards. Sugarcane planters brought a mongoose from India to their fields, and it presumably ate the rats. Fewer rats meant less damage to the sugarcane, so the planters were happy and told the newspapers about their success. Why should we be any worse, thought the plantation owners in Hawaii. In the 1880s, 72 mongooses from Jamaica were brought to the Big Island and grown there. Their offspring were sent to plantations on other islands, first to Maui, then to Molokai, and finally to Oahu. To put it simply, even back then, not everyone on the Big Island was on board with the mongoose idea. They thought more research was needed on how the animals would fare in the Caribbean, and that the study should be completed before bringing the animals to Hawaii. Unfortunately, no one listened to these skeptics, and soon something unexpected was revealed. Rats are nocturnal animals, which means they're active only at night. Mongooses are active only during the day. Sounds familiar? These two haven't even interacted with each other, and instead of clearing the cane fields of rats, mongooses started wiping out native species of animals and plants. Numerous bird and turtle species are in danger as their eggs are completely vulnerable to voracious predators. The situation was getting increasingly worse. In the end, special barriers were installed to prevent mongooses from entering nature reserves and protected areas. But it seems, unlike Japan,
So again, this is ultimately our fault for not knowing its operating schedule. You know what I'm saying? We got to figure out these animals' operating schedules. If the rats and the mice, if they out at night, we can't go and get a mongoose. It's not gonna work. We gotta get the right animal for the job. Like, come on, man. This is on us.
and Hawaii missed the chance to act. Fighting the mongooses is already too late. Despite all the efforts of the officials, controlling the population of invasive predators today is so difficult that it's almost impossible. The mongoose is responsible for the death of at least 8 bird species native to Hawaii, birds that were included on the federal endangered species list. But actually, the Hawaii government doesn't call the import of mongooses biocontrol because the animals didn't go through a special assessment before being imported. And you could say that Hawaii got off pretty easy. After a British colonist brought mongooses to his Jamaican sugar plantation in 1872, there was a tick outbreak. The idea was that the mongooses would eat the rats. They didn't do that, but they spread all over Jamaica and drastically reduced the populations of local birds and reptiles. There was almost no one to eat insects and arthropods, hence the tick outbreak. The colonists complained a lot, but the British authorities claimed that the ticks were attacking the mongooses and that nature's balance would restore itself. Right. Sure. Out of lizards. On 4 small islands in the Caribbean Sea, St. Croix ground lizards rustle in the fallen leaves, fighting and foraging. But in a cruel twist, on the namesake island, these lizards were completely wiped out. They lost the battle against the voracious invasive small mongooses and land redevelopment. On 2 neighboring coastal islands, there were only 400 lizards left, which hadn't been eaten yet. Luckily, people raised the alarm, started moving the lizards to safe places, and increased the total population to nearly 3,000 individuals. Now scientists are working not only to save the lizards from extinction, but also to return them to the namesake island. A 4,000-year-old idea. In a recent study of tombs dating back 4,000 years in Egypt, a drawing was discovered showing a person leading an animal resembling a mongoose on a leash. This is the only image of its kind in Egyptian art. But just take a look. It clearly shows a collar and leash. It's known that mongooses have never been fully domesticated, meaning they haven't undergone controlled breeding, but some cultures did keep mongooses as pets. All for the same reason we've talked about so many times today, to control pets like snakes, rats, and mice. However, scientists suggest that the mongoose depicted in the tomb on a leash might have been used to scare off birds. This made hunting easier, though I'm not sure the second leash is attached to a dog. To me,
But how do you hold it in captive though? Like you keeping it in a cage and you going over there and feeding it and then putting it on a leash? Like I don't understand how they were able to do that. That's what I'm having a hard time wrapping in my mind around. I get it though. Snake in the house, go get the mongoose. Bring him in, catch the snake, take him back to the cage. Like I get the whole thing. Is just domesticating them and keeping them is what I can't get my head wrapped around.
it looks like some sort of goat without horns. Officer Mongoose. Like other countries, Sri Lanka uses dogs to sniff out illegal substances, but at some point a new idea came up. Mongooses. Locals have been using mongooses for generations to scare away cobras from their farms, so why not expand their job list? An application for a grant was submitted to the State Department requesting funding for a pilot project to train mongooses in detecting illegal substances, and the grant was awarded for a whopping $50,000. They also hired a specialist and convinced the National Zoo to let them use their grounds for training. The idea was to release a couple of mongooses into a cargo container filled with car parts. They'd rummage around in there, and if they found something undesirable, they'd come out with bristling tails. Do you think this is impossible? Turns out mongooses can be trained. They also passed the test successfully, and people were full of enthusiasm. But the project never got off the ground. Change in leadership, country upheavals, and everyone forgot about the mongooses. Too bad. They would have been cool cops. I'd even watch a sequel to Zootopia with them. You owe me a like.
All right, now before you leave, like I just checked out a video not too long ago about octopus and when they have babies, a lot of them die, and it's an area that they go to when they give birth, and they end up dying there. So this video poses a similar question to what happens if you save an octopus after mating. So I need to know where this goes. I gotta know where this goes. Come with me.
One of the smartest animals on the planet just can't catch a break. Male octopuses age instantly, having barely reached the second half of their life, and die without fully realizing the potential of their brain. But what if you help them avoid this fate? Who will be the smartest creature on the planet then? Let's find out. Octopoda includes roughly 300 most different species, but they all have one thing in common. They live a damn short life. Some species survive only up to 6 months, some up to 2 years. The giant Pacific octopus can live 3 years, and this makes it a real grandpa in the world of cephalopods. But why do octopuses die young? Weirdly enough, this is entirely the fault of evolution. It just didn't give them a safe way to procreate. I mean, for many animals, mating can be quite risky if the female is larger than the male, but when it comes to octopuses, the differences in size are sometimes mind-blowing. Take Tremoctopus genus, for example. Females can reach 6.5 feet in length and males only 1 inch. The weight ratio is at least 10,000 to 1 and could probably reach 40,000 to 1. It's clear that under these conditions, procreation can be a little risky. Furthermore, females very often kill males after mating or right during it. What for? Well, first of all, another octopus makes for a nutritious and delicious dinner, or at least a snack, depending on its size. And second, sometimes the female just suddenly gets aggressive. Sorry, buddy, today's definitely not your day. To somehow protect themselves, male octopuses have grown an ectocotylis, something like a modified tentacle, specially designed for reproduction at a distance. Using this extra arm, the octopus delivers to the female everything necessary. And at the same time, he doesn't risk as much. Does it help? Well, sometimes. In some octopuses, for example the argonauts, a long ectocotylis detaches from the male's body and loads everything it needs, swims on its own until it reaches the female. Hey, did I tell you to detach? Sorry, duty calls. But let's say the male survived the mating. Even if he came across a calm female or the ectocotylis did its job, the challenges are not over yet. Mating causes males' health to deteriorate rapidly. They enter a period of aging and death within a few weeks or even days. Why? Well, from the point of view of evolution, their mission is accomplished, so it's time to rest. The genitals of the octopus mature thanks to the optic gland, which also switches off the digestive glands, and the male simply dies of starvation.
Typical male. Knowing that mating is gonna kill us, we still do it. We still do it. Just can't turn it down. Even an octopus suffers from the same fate as the rest of the males. Like, bro, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with us?
Females got a better deal and can live for months or even years after mating. They lay eggs and protect them until the offspring hatch. Well, octopus mothers still have to survive without food, which is why they eventually die. Look, am I the only one who thinks this scheme is not that great? Okay, what if the male won't mate? Suppose we have to deprive him of his life's mission. Will this help save his life? Oddly enough, it will. Maybe it won't be a life full of fun, but it'll be a long one. Remember when I mentioned the giant Pacific octopus, the grandpa among other octopuses? If he avoids mating, he can live up to 5 years old in the wild. Of course, scientists with their lab experiments couldn't stand idly by. They removed the optic glands, which activate mating and stop digestion, causing the octopus to stop reproducing, start eating and growing, and his lifespan became significantly longer. Hold on. If octopuses can live longer, why does evolution make them die? Seems like the researchers can't get a definite answer yet. If we disregard the answer like, well, that's just what evolution wanted, then perhaps the reason lies in overpopulation. After all, octopuses are born in huge numbers. Sometimes the number of fertilized eggs reaches 70,000. The entire world ocean would only have octopuses if nature hadn't figured out how to deal with them. But back to the issue of lifespan. What if all octopuses lived at least 2 years longer? The thing is, they're really damn smart. Unscrewing lids, squeezing through tiny holes, and perfect disguise are only part of the octopus's abilities. Each tentacle of the octopus acts as if it has its own independent mind and intent. If one of them is amputated, this tentacle will continue to respond to stimuli for the next hour. It can crawl away if it wants to. Perhaps the human hand from the Addams family once belonged to a human octopus. Octopuses also have excellent eyesight, memory, and are quick learners. Some species even use tools, and almost all have certain character traits. Can you imagine what these creatures will be capable of if you give them a little more time? Are they going to be as smart as me? I became so enlightened, it's like I lived for 100 trillion billion years on trillions and trillions of planets like that, you know? Actually, it would even be logical. The longer a creature lives, the more it learns. We know octopuses can learn to handle tasks by watching other animals do it. That includes humans, too. Octopuses in captivity often learn to play and solve puzzles because otherwise they just get bored. Yes, this is the flip side of having a developed intellect. You need to be busy with something. In the German city of Coburg, an octopus named Otto was known to juggle his fellow tank mates around and throw stones to smash the glass. On several occasions, Otto even caused short circuits by shooting a stream of water into the overhead lamp. How did he even know how electricity works? No idea. Still, Otto somehow learned this. Did someone accidentally leave a physics textbook next to the tank? Get him! He knows too much! So, it means if octopuses could start to live for a really long time, they'll be able to overthrow us and take over the planet? After all, it worked for humans. Once upon a time...
So let's just find a happy median. You know what I mean? I want them to live, but not live to be smart enough to then destroy us or take humans out. Like, let's find a little comfortable, happy, little sweet spot area for them. You know what I mean? But like I said, they typical males. They're not going to give up mating. We know they not.
Our distant ancestors could barely survive to 30 years. Lack of food, diseases, and other problems simply prevented them from living a long life. But today, we can easily live up to 70. You could even say that 70 is the new 30 in modern society, and as soon as humans began to live longer, they had time to invent, explore, and conquer the planet. So are we really sure it's a good idea to increase the lifespan of octopuses? What if they can really take over the world and then, I don't know, fly away to conquer space? Relax. Yes, octopuses are very smart, but they develop very slowly. In their current state, they will not be able to get out of the water to wage a war against humans. Octopuses need to stay wet in order to survive. They won't be able to evolve rapidly. Over the past 300 million years, octopuses have not changed much, while humans have existed for only 200,000 years, and over this time, they've taken over the planet. On the other hand, octopuses will be really comfortable in space. They are neutrally buoyant, that is, they do not float or sink, which means that gravity is not relevant to them. Have you seen how vertebrates act in zero gravity? They're terrified. But the octopuses will feel great, provided they take water with them. On the one hand, this is all a bit reassuring. But on the other, I'm not the only one who thought octopuses could take over the world. Moreover, they are quite capable of studying us as we are studying them.
Because some of us still believe octopus are aliens. They didn't come from this. They weren't here. They came from a totally different planet. What planet? I don't know. But they just give off alien vibes. The intelligence, the smarts, the way they move, the tentacles. It's just everything. If I look at it, I instantly think alien.
The most striking example is the story of Craig Foster, who dived without a wetsuit and established contact with a female octopus. For several weeks, she evaded him and hid in her den, camouflaged herself, swam away, well, did everything an octopus is supposed to do when it spots a predator. But over time, the animal realized Foster is not a threat. And then after 26 days of near-obsessive wooing, she reached out and touched him. The female was so accustomed to the man, she began to let him near her den, take him on the hunt, and generally allowed him to be around as much as Foster wanted. Perhaps if the octopuses lived longer, she'd have time to teach him a couple of tricks. But if octopuses are so incredibly smart, why haven't they come up with some reliable way to survive after mating? They can unscrew lids, throw stones, and tame divers, but they can't deal with the female? Well, actually, they made some progress here too. Over millions of years of natural selection, male octopuses have found a couple of creative solutions for dealing with particularly dangerous females. Well, the males didn't succeed in growing bigger. They came up with a better idea. One strategy involves finding a good spot near the den of one or more females. If it comes across such a spot, the octopus settles down there and then keeps one or two females within the reach of its, well, that very appendage for reproduction. Basically, the male just extends it and reaches for the female while staying safe in his den. That's fertilization from around the corner. Honey, come here. Let's not rush things. Don't even try to imagine humans adopting this strategy. Seriously, don't. True, this approach doesn't completely solve the problem, but the octopuses clearly understand what's what and are working on it. Give them some time. After all, it's only been 300 million years. See you later.